Hmm. Greet everyone. So here we are. What have you been doing? Haven't seen you in a long while, maybe over a year. I think Jordan will join us soon.
Yeah, I've just been busy. I have a one-way hour-long commute that is taking 10 hours of my week, and I
Oh,
can't get back.
geez. And where is that?
I live just south of Lansing, and I commute into Ann Arbor
Oh, goodness gracious.
for work.
South of Lansing would be near Olivet.
Yeah, I
My
live in Holt.
my father spent the last 6 years of his career as the business manager of Olivet College.
Huh.
Yeah, small world.
Yeah.
And back in the day, when my dad was still in the Navy, he spent 3 years assigned to the Borg water plant in Kalamazoo, and we lived in Pawpaw at that time.
Hmm.
And good morning, Jordan. Sorry for the late start here.
Good morning.
I got forced to do a reboot, and that is never fun.
Ain't tech grand.
Yeah, but here we are, and
Hey, Brian.
I
Hey, how
should
are you
know
doing?
better and log on earlier, I suppose. But
Well, it actually was serendipitous because um, I think yesterday I thought I should do white vinegar in my coffee maker just because every once in a while, it gets the minerals and all that in there. And
right,
so I didn't. And this morning, it's sitting there kind of struggling, and it it took 15 minutes instead of 5. So
uh,
it worked out for me just fine.
good.
So
And
now I
so,
have.
let's see. So Susan on YouTube has said something. Uh, oops, I got the time wrong. Thought you were not on and commented. I worried unnecessarily. Great to see you. Looking forward to this as always. Okay, nice to see you, Susan. I'm sorry, my Apple insisted that I had to reboot my computer, and that took 10 minutes. Um, and God knows why it had to think about it that long, but it did. And so here I am, and here we are, and we are at a we're in an article called Abraxas, Jung's Gnostic Demiurge in Liber Novus, and the title of this section is Prophecy of a New Age and a New God Image. And so so here we go. Prophecy of a New Age and a New God Image. Jung's epical Liber Novus is, in the consensus view of informed readers, a book of prophecy. On the initial folio of Liber Novus, Jung presents an image of a complex landscape surmounted by a zodiac, and showing forth the eonial passage of the sun from the sign of Pisces into that of Aquarius. This image points forward to his title, The Way of What Is to Come. The reader then encounters several prophetic quotations from the writings of the prophet Isaiah and from the prologue to the Gospel of John. Jung's Liber Novus thus sets the stage for disclosure of a new prophecy. Now, I do have that image, and I think I should share it. Maybe. Do you have comments on this at this point, Jordan?
Actually, there's a little serendipity. Hold on one second.
Okay. Serendipity. Serendipity sounds like synchronicity to me.
Well, yeah, both. My stepmom came in this last week to the cabin, and she's moving. The house started feeling like a mausoleum several years, after my dad passed, and
Right.
but she brought a bunch of memorabilia.
Huh.
And in one of them, there are two big watercolors, but interestingly enough, I did this series of like postcard size way back in 1995.
Wait a minute. I didn't see that. Could you show that to me again?
They're like postcard size.
Okay.
And there were in the big archival box that my dad must have bought to house two paintings that he just wanted to keep, but not frame. Was this little bitty watercolor, and it says Newman at the bottom.
Cool.
And then another one, the Dioscuri.
Yep. And what is Dioscuri?
The paired opposite, and I'll get you a proper definition. I haven't even used the word in 20 years.
So those were done by you?
Yeah.
Cool.
And it comes from the Greek, twin deities who succored shipwrecked sailors and received sacrifices for favorable winds. Children of Leda and Zeus, and either Zeus, they were the king of the gods. They're twin deities, and so basically you get this is the Dioscuri is the kind of seed of an Antiadromia.
I really like that painting, Jordan.
Thank you. You
ought to consider printing it with Giclée.
And now that I have them, last week I bought some more painting supplies, and I just went and bought them, and it wasn't a priority, but I kind of went and bought them without even a thought. And then when I saw these paintings, it was just one of those, oh, okay, I'm on my own bleeding edge. Time to start painting again. So, and make prints and put them on my website and et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, good idea.
Yeah, because all of a sudden, I have to tell you about what we're going to do for an ongoing confluence, which is going to be online essentially, which means that there will be recordings of it. You don't have to be there at the live session, but you may want to be. And so what we decided to do, since organizing a big conference was somewhat difficult. Okay, it was a hard effort that we had to put into it to make it happen. And so we're going to do something a little more simply, and we want to include the people who attended Confluence the last time, and or the last two times. And so what we're going to do is on July the 13th, we're going to have a Confluence meeting on Zoom. It will be, and I'll be sharing the parameters for it at another time, and maybe I'll do it by the end of this session, but you'll need to register it. It will be free, but what we're going to do is the first day on July the 13th, at 10 o'clock in the morning, West Coast time, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Eastern time, and in the early evening in European time, in order so as to gather as many people from around the world as we can. We're going to be showing our work from the unconscious, because we think that that's the most important and unique thing that we can be teaching right now. And so the first session on July the 13th will begin with about a half an hour in which the organizers of Confluence, there's a couple of not previously named people who have been active in our organizing, so there may be 8 of us, and each one of us will show one piece and talk about how the unconscious informed that piece. And then we're going to open it up and we're specifically going to ask people who attended Confluence before to comment on it. They'll be able to join our panel and comment on that first 30 minutes and with questions and so on. With the second day, which will be Sunday, July the 14th, again at the same time, these will be about 1.5 to 2 hour sessions. And these sessions will be moderated by Colleen Keybert and Tim Holmes. And I will be flying the Zoom as usual. And so anyway, on the second day, we're going to invite people who attended Confluence, either of the years, 22 or 23, to show their work. And again, only one piece, but talking again about how the unconscious informed their work. Then at a future date to be named. So anyway, on Sunday, the Confluence attendees will show their work, and for 30 to 45 minutes talking about the unconscious and how it informed their work. And then we'll open it up for general discussion and questions, both from YouTube and from our panel audience. And that basically will be the first weekend. And then whoever's moderating, and this first weekend will be entirely moderated by Colleen and Tim, will kind of do a wrap up of each day's events. And then the next one that we do will probably be at sometime in August, or maybe just after Labor Day or something. We're going to do similar sessions every 1 to 2 months, probably every maybe we'll settle on every 6 weeks. We're going to do painting from the unconscious again, but it will be open to everybody in the world to submit pieces to talk about and to be members of the panel. And we will rotate the moderators among our organizers. So there'll be 2 moderators during each session. I don't think it'll be a 2-day session in the future, but this opening one will be, because we want to demonstrate what we're trying to drive at. And then we're going to give people who attended Confluence and know who we are and what we're about to also participate. And then in the future ones, we will invite people from around the world to attend or to participate, as many as possible. We probably think that that's going to be 6 or 8 people each time. and everybody will have an opportunity to show one piece and talk about their artistic process. And and I was insistent that there be a physical element, a face-to-face element, because of the need to be in the same room in order to uh, have unconscious uh, results be strong enough. And so about once a year, we're going to do a pop-up show. We'll start in Santa Cruz, and Colleen's group is already doing that twice this summer. So they're working the kinks out of the process. But probably in August of 2025, we will have a pop-up show in Santa Cruz, and everybody will be invited to come and show their art, particularly those that participate during the year, and be in the same room with everyone, um, at least for one weekend a year. But we're not going to organize it at a convention center and take responsibility for people's paying and all that stuff. We're just going to have a pop-up show, which costs us at the museum in Santa Cruz. It only costs us about $1,000. And we might ask each participant to kick in $100 or something like that. And so we'll get that to happen, but then everybody's on their own to decide uh, how they want to come, where they want to stay, and all that stuff. But those dates are to be announced, and we hope many people will participate. Comments, Jordan?
Well, one comment, I think that's great because the inclusivity of being online and in person really accommodates everybody.
Yeah.
And for all the kinds of reasons. And what's interesting, what came to me though, that last line of the stage for the disclosure of its new prophecy in regards to the Red Book, what comes to mind is, any technology like this, sufficiently developed, appears like magic.
Mm-hmm.
And Jung, what I didn't think about this, but Jung's Red Book coming in a sense out of the blue, was a technology sufficiently developed that it appeared like magic, like a prophecy, because of
Sure.
the way he articulately and specifically navigated the abstract into the specific to visually storytell what was going on, where it really doesn't need words. And
Mm-hmm.
it becomes a once upon a time, just non-verbally go through the images, the end, it
Right.
kind of becomes, this, there's a
Right.
magic quality to I hadn't thought about the utilizing of the unconscious as a new technology. It's always been utilized, but now consciously utilizing the unconscious, there's kind of a meditate or meditate the mindfulness, or it's like meditate the prayer and pray the meditation. I mean, so there's back and forth that actually is pretty subtle, but
Yeah.
deceptively simple.
Right. So we feel that the physical presence of people will be important. And there's definitely a prophetic aspect to this, because I've been popping out stuff that's prophetic about this year's election, almost every painting that I do. And in a way, it's really frightening how it's coming out. And just to show you an example, I have a sample of a painting that I had given. What happened to this? I went to the library. Okay. I'm going to show you a piece that I gave to my granddaughter. And I didn't until I saw this again in a picture of my granddaughter showing me the piece. I did not see what is in it. And in a way, it's both interesting that I did not see it, and interesting that it is so prophetic. And so I'm gonna share my screen here just so you can see what I'm talking about. And okay, all right. So this is my granddaughter and her. And what I want you to look at is the center of this painting and see what you see in there. Now, obviously, this is a lot of stuff that came from the unconscious, but what I saw while I was in Aptos, I was looking at this picture again, which I had not seen until I looked at this photo of my granddaughter, is the serpent and Trump in the serpent. So here's a huge serpent's head right here. Are you seeing my cursor?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a serpent's head here. There, the eyes are here, that yellow eye, and here in this region. And the serpent's mouth is wide open. This is the mouth of the serpent. And inside the mouth of the serpent is Trump. And he's looking apprehensively at the future. And here's the serpent's head. And then the serpent's body goes out and around and into the past here. So are you seeing what I'm seeing? Do you understand what I've said?
Yes.
Okay. What do you think of that? I mean, here is a really scary serpent coming out of the frame at you.
Well, it's interesting to me because I can see that, but I see light inside the dark. So that the in a sense the diaskeri, the light coming out of the dark mouth of the serpent. So it's as if the serpent from the depth of the soul has brought up consciousness to put out, or instead of to consume, almost to exhume light out of the serpent's mouth. So that rather than politically, I'm just seeing it from a Jungian perspective of this enantiodromic light in the dark, but that literally that the serpent is this, in a sense, water bearer who's bringing the depth refined up into the light so that it becomes conscious at the same time. So that consciousness is clothed in the unconscious.
Yeah.
So both. I mean, and that's what I love about the what you see. You know, you have intent, and at the same time, then you see things you didn't even intend. And
I certainly did not intend that serpent in a birthday gift to my granddaughter. Certainly did not intend that.
Well, and I think that matches my view of tarot. I mean, I can look up in a tree and see Einstein's crazy hair, and that's inner art in nature. And we are nature. And then in the images, if I say not the cards, but your painting, that's exploring inner nature in the art of the painting.
Okay, so we were talking about Jung, his red book coming out with prophecy. And my position is that if you paint from the unconscious, you actually are painting prophecy, and you can see the prophecy in it. And I see so many examples of this in my own paintings now. I've done 25 or 30 of these, and most of them have a prophecy in them of one sort or another. And I do that entirely from the unconscious. So, in other words, the process is I doodle, and everybody has their own doodle, their own mark. So the way you do it is you doodle, then you color the doodle, and then you outline all the color boundaries with a dark color. Doesn't have to be black. I use a watercolor color called Moon Glow for my outlining, and it seems to work out pretty well. So I'll just show the results from my process once again, so you see what I'm talking about. So here is, so you see I've doodled, so it's pretty nondescript what I've put on the page, and then I color it. But when you color it, it already is getting imagery in it, and then when you outline it, you get all kinds of imagery, incredible imagery with faces and creatures and all kinds of things that you can see in there. And the upper right represents the future, and the color yellow in my paintings represents hope. And so that's the essence of it. But that's my system. That doesn't mean it needs to be anybody else's system, but mine is informed by Colleen Kubert's new book called Art and Spirit, a memoir. So basically my process is covered in chapters 11 to 13 and chapter 17 of her book. And that's based on her lifetime of working as a professional artist. So it's pretty good provenance in terms of the process. I'm sorry I didn't see your question before you removed it, Susan, but what I do is I try to listen to my unconscious. So when I doodle, I let my unconscious tell me where my fingers or my paintbrush should go on the page very loosely. And then I color the image based on what my unconscious tells me the color should be in the on the paper. And if I don't know yet, I put it aside until I can pick it up and paint. And then the third step is to do this rocky process of coloring or outlining all the color boundaries, except obviously I don't outline every color boundary. Some people do it very loosely and very big. My approach seems to be very, very minuscule. So I'm going into the details, whereas somebody else might not do that. And I have some excellent examples of pieces that others have done using this process that are quite incredible. And they've only put, I don't know, 5 or 10 lines in it, and let the color boundaries just be as they are. So anyway,
Interesting too. This I just was trying to search my email to see if I had an image. I can't find any, but there's a series I want to resurrect too and do another similar that I called Night Pools and the Midnight Ocean. And rather than paints, I used non-archival, really cheap black paper, so that it wasn't indigo, it wasn't indelible inks. And I used bleach, Armor All, Windex, and degreaser to basically sun out and bleach the paper in these circles. And so instead of painting in, I corrosived out. And it was quite interesting because you get this kind of incandescent yellow, gold, warm light coming out of this kind of muted lamp black paper. I'll have to see if I can find some images, but the problem is I have to do them outside, because when I did them before, I had a huge loft in Denver that I was just, someone had gone to Mexico and, hey, can you come live here and take care of it? Well, 5,000-6,000 square feet, literally, with like a 2,000 square foot ballroom on the side.
Right.
Well, it was so big, you never really were concerned about doing something smelly in one corner because you'd never reach anywhere else. But with all the bleach, I remember working on 10 different paintings one day. And then at dinner, all of a sudden I'm going, my whole house smells like an Olympic-sized swimming pool. I need to start doing this outside. So
Yeah. So anyway, Susan has replaced her question. How can one discern if one is painting or drawing from the unconscious as opposed to from one's opinions or fears, etc., please? And how can I begin to be sure? Okay, well, first of all, when you're trying to work from your unconscious, you have to wait for your impulse to put anything down on paper. Okay, so you just wait until your unconscious says, okay, draw this line, whatever it is, and then you just keep going. And when I do my doodle, I normally try not to stop, or if I have a very big piece, like my big Vision of America piece, I do fairly large swaths before I put it down each time. And so if your psyche is telling you to paint this picture of this building behind me, or to paint somebody's portrait, that isn't it. Okay. that's you relying on somebody else. Okay, so this is Carl Jung's work here, this building, and it was his unconscious every 4 years telling him how to do each of the 4 major parts of this house. But nobody else would have done it in stone. And so Jordan's way is as good as any other. And the proof of concept that with these pop-up shows that Colleen is doing with her group is with sculpture. It's not with visual. It's not with painting or anything like drawing or painting. So if you're trying to paint Umtifrats, whatever it is that you're trying to paint, and do a picture of it, you're probably not working from the unconscious, because, oh yeah, I could draw Jung's home and it would probably look more or less like Jung's home, but that's Jung's home. That's not coming from my unconscious. And so you just have to allow yourself to do it. And as far as opinions are concerned, yeah, your unconscious may have opinions and it may cause you to do it a certain way, but try to not focus on any object. It should be abstract. Okay.
And I think along those lines too, when I'm consciously painting, it's like when I start, there's a conscious I'm starting, but I think the unconscious part is when I'm literally just road trip navigating, not trying to make something. I'm letting my hand move and moving my hand. I mean, there's always consciousness there, but there's a point of surrender and letting go where you're literally playing and you're not trying to make a particular thing. And what I find, there comes a point when, oh, it's done. Then the consciousness comes back, but it just kind of almost growth by accretion forms some kind of visual something. I don't even want to say story at that point.
Well, and what I'm amazed at is when I've completed all 3 steps, things come out that are amazing, and even that I don't see in advance. So I've been doing these, one for each of my grandchildren and each of my daughters, for their birthdays. And so far I've delivered 10, I think. I have 3 more to go, 2 grandchildren and my eldest daughter. But I am following that process, and I'm often amazed at the things that pop out of the work as I'm doing it. And sometimes it pops out quite early. So, for example, when I was doing The Grinch, I think most of you have seen The Grinch. Um, the monkey on the back of the center person's head popped out almost at the beginning of the doodle, and I wasn't doing it intentionally, but I saw the monkey there, and I said, that's a good thing to have in this painting. Whatever else happens, that monkey is a good thing. I'm going to keep that. So I saw that very early in the doodle process, and I took a picture of it. I'm going to talk about this online, maybe in the middle of this week, just talking about this painting and how I did it. But the point is that as I went, stuff started to pop out of that painting, and I had painted the central face as orange, with the thought that, okay, I'm an Orangeman. I'm a 1/4 Dutch American. And so the Dutch are the princes of Orange. So a quarter of me comes from this House of Orange. Very mysterious how it got that name. But in any case, so I see myself as an Orangeman very often. And so I'm using orange in that central figure, and it represents either me or Donald Trump, and I don't know which one until the piece gets further developed. And so I'm arguing that this one represents, the one that's the Grinch represents Donald Trump, and
When Brian in the chat mentioned Art and Spirit, I tried to look, I didn't find an author.
yeah, Art and Spirit by Colleen Kibert.
Okay,
I'll put it into the chat. But let's go on with Abraxas here. All right. So in any case, what I'm saying is that I'm often getting prophecy out of my abstract painting. Prophecy comes out to me, and I see it. And my prophecy may be wrong, but nonetheless, that's how my unconscious is seeing the world right now. So throughout Liber Primus and Liber Secundus of Liber Novus, we find recurring references to the coming of the new age of Aquarius. In an impressive section that Jung titled The Three Prophecies, his soul reveals to him 3 periods in the forthcoming age: war, magic, and religion. In commentary on this vision, Jung wrote, "These 3 mean the unleashing of chaos and its power, just as they also mean the binding of chaos. War is obvious and everybody sees it. Magic is dark and no one sees it. Religion is still to come, but it will become evident. I felt the burden of the most terrible work of the times ahead. I saw where and how, but no word can grasp it. No will can conquer it. But I saw it, and my memory will not leave me alone." Okay, so we've talked at length about how the Red Book really was Jung tapping into the collective unconscious of Europe in 1913, early 1914, and seeing the war coming. He didn't know it was coming, but somehow his unconscious picked up on the fact that there was going to be a war, World War I in Europe. And it's an amazing collection of dreams and visions that he had, which were coming up, plus this work on the Red Book. And remember that the main guts of the Red Book, the visions and dreams that he had, but mostly the active imagination, all came up in about a 10-week period, beginning on Christmas Day, 1913. And so it must have been an incredible time for his psyche where it was really, really pushing him. And I've had an experience like that related to something entirely different. So I'm not going to talk about that here, but there was this intense creative period for Jung where he would, for about 10 weeks, and that's about 70% of the Red Book, occurred before the middle of March of 1914. So still months before the outbreak of World War I. But he had already got it all prophetically. And so he's said war is obvious. It was obvious to some people who were plugged in that war was coming. Magic is dark, and so we can talk about Hitler's magic and control over the German nation, and we can talk about Trump's magic, dark magic that he has over the MAGA people, and how that's become half of our society. And that is magic. It's explainable, but it's explainable, but nonetheless, it works, and it's very dark magic. And so
Well, and
here
I think
Jung
also,
said magic is dark. Go ahead.
yeah, magic is dark. And I think one thing's interesting is to take it back out of political and back into painting, to not be afraid of your contents. And it doesn't mean to be indiscriminate. I mean, don't do harm to yourself, but instead of editing with these kinds of paintings, I call it interrogating tensions.
Right.
Where I may be wrestling and modifying as things are coming in. I'm still actively present, but I don't take my inner contents personally. I take them professionally, because just like interacting with someone who's really angry, just listen more deeply, because no matter what they say, this is their stuff. It's usually
Right.
not your stuff. And, unless you did something, then that's a different story. But I find that with these intensities, it's important to kind of train yourself to treat yourself to be comfortable with your intensities, not try to make some pretty status quo of some soft, oh, I don't want anyone to see this, they'll think I'm nuts. I mean, no, everyone's nuts. And I think, it's a kind of thing where there are these contents, and they come from the dark, from the deep. And I call it making besties with beasties. If I'm in the dark, I have my eyes and they have theirs, and they can threaten all they want. I can't see how big and scary they are. Like a 4-year-old, hey, what's your name? And it's like,
Right.
so
And I can show a direct example of this. I have it in my Vision of America painting. I'm not yet enamored with my Vision of America painting. This is a very early stage. But what I wanted to talk about is that evil emerged immediately. And there's one cell in this that I saw as very evil. And that's this cell up here. Can you see my cursor?
yes.
Okay, so this cell that's purple, I saw that cell, its shape as evil. And Judith Oakland, who's one of the people that I communicate with and who is a psychotherapist, said, you know, Skip, evil often comes up first when you're dealing with the unconscious and in therapy and so on. When, you know, people have, you know, these things cough themselves up. And so I saw this cell as evil immediately when it was still only in this doodle. And this doodle, mind you, took 6 weeks. And this piece is 40 by 25 and a half. So it's quite large. I haven't even finished coloring it yet. But this is an early stage. And so I painted that in as purple, representing a source of wisdom, right? And so how would I counter that? I wondered how I should counter that. And I decided to counter it with orange, and just a face off. So you can see this orange snake going up through here. And that was it. Those were almost the first two things that I colored in this painting. And in fact, I colored evil before I even completed the doodle, but I'm just showing it at this stage for a demonstration. And it was like after Judith said that to me, that evil often comes up first, I said to myself, well, how do I combat evil in this painting? And I decided to combat it with orange. And so you see the snake hiding behind the tree, and it's a good snake. It's a helpful snake, and it's facing off the evil. And so that's just a demonstration of exactly what we're talking about here. And so, you know, in the end, I've done now 19 studies of my vision of America. So I've done 19 pieces that are trying to inform me about how to do this work. And some of them have informed me. The one I showed of my granddaughter is one that informed me, and it really informed me when I saw the snake, but only after I had sent it to her as a birthday gift. I probably won't tell her. But I can talk about it here. And so anyway, so as Jung says, magic is dark and no one sees it. Religion is still to come, but it will become evident. I felt the burden of the most terrible work of the times ahead, which was the burden of the war coming. And then he says, but I saw it and my memory will not leave it alone. So again, like Jung, I couldn't forget the fact that I had seen evil in the Vision of America piece, which is far from being done yet. I hope to finish it within this year, but there's a lot of coloring still to do in it, and I haven't even started the Rocky process on it as of now. And that is typically taking 4 to 5 times the amount of time that the other stuff takes. It's going to be a magnum opus.
It will be. I think another thing that's important is the sneaky quality of evil, where it's like tracking something at night with no lights. You know, anything that's alive absorbs light. And so you're looking for the darker in the darkness. And it's, you know, see the blacker in the black. And it's kind of like trying to see a flashlight in the day. It's difficult, if not almost impossible. But at night, it's easier to see the darker in the dark. And so understanding how the subtlety and the nuance can clue you in, but in that sense, you have to inspect your expectations instead of blind spots. you're looking for what's more not there to show its presence, which is almost oxymoronic, but at the same time, you are looking for that darker in the dark. And I think that can be helpful as a way to vision and look for, rather than, I'm seeing red, blue, and yellow and A, B, C, D kind of thing.
Right. And I just wanted to finish answering Susan's question, which is, how can I begin to be sure? And the answer to that is you can't. You just trust the process. And there was another, well, the Grinch piece. I I wondered if I could give it to my number 3 daughter for her birthday, and I blew hot and cold on that uh, throughout the process of painting it. It took 40 hours. I put 40 hours into that painting, and finally I decided that it was lighthearted enough that I could do it. I could give it to her, knowing that she has 3 very young children, ages 7 and 5, one pair of twins that are 7. And so I ultimately gave it to her, but I probably swapped back and forth about whether I should give it to her maybe a dozen times as I was doing the work. And so you can't be sure, and you just have to trust the process and keep going and see what happens. Now, Richard says, go
I
ahead.
think to respond to Susan there too, I think it's about action instead of intention.
Mhm.
And to me, it's being comfortable with the not knowing while still getting things done.
Yeah.
And I think that to be sure is drilled into us, but that's more of a wantrapreneur. 95% research, trying to figure out what you think you want to say, 5% action, but you don't get anything done because you never had a vision. The train never left the station. Versus it's more entrepreneur, 5%, okay, turn myself this direction. That's the research. And then 95% live it into being, be comfortable with the not knowing while still getting things done.
Right. And which is exactly what Jung did. He was way less knowledgeable about consciously knowledgeable about what was coming in his own work at this time. And God bless him for having worked through it. But most of the rest of us would be broken by this 10-week visioning period. Okay, so Robert says it seems to reason that all art comes from the subconscious. Makes no difference what media or type of art, your emotions will guide you regardless. And so, Richard, I want to emphasize that in Jungian psychology, we're not talking about the subconscious, we're talking about the unconscious. And as Jung himself said on a video, and the unconscious is really unconscious. And the subconscious is, well, geez, you're not thinking about an elephant right now until I said the word, and now everybody's thinking about an elephant, right? Well, that's subconscious. That's something that you can call up if you say a word. That's, that's word magic. But in doing this painting, you are seeking to see what the unconscious has to say to you. And that's really what I've been getting. I had not been doing this with the thought to sell any of these pieces, although I think I may offer a few of them in print form. But I'm doing it for myself, to inform myself of what is in my unconscious. And so all of this work that I've been doing, especially since the first of the year, is I've been doing at 6 a.m. for the most part, and as long as I can, and given my schedule. And it has been informing me about what's in my unconscious. That's it. Okay, that's the main thing it's been doing for me. And I find it's an amazing meditation technique. It really focuses the mind. And I've been around Buddhist meditation and mantras for 30 years. And for me, this works brilliantly for me. Okay, I can't say it's for everyone. But anyway, I just
Well,
wanted to emphasize that distinction between the subconscious, which is you're not thinking about it right now, but you can call it up at any time, and the unconscious, which you cannot know what it is until you start to do something like this or meditate. Meditation in any form does the same thing. Going to church does the same thing. But we've never thought about it that way until we start to talk about it. And then I realized that, everything that gives you access to the unconscious, everything you can do in life, including making an omelet, all that is actually art and is coming from the unconscious in some way.
Brian made an excellent distinction. There's a difference between art and craft. And I think it's important here because if you really, really know, how do you know and you're sure, that's more towards craft because there's a technique driven quality to it. There is a form quality to it, possibly even a certain stylistic signature to it, which you're in structure, whereas the not knowing and the art has that making an omelet structure without stricture. You may be doing a familiar thing differently every single time. And as Colleen says, I think the extreme example of, God help the artist with a gimmick. And, Brian said
Yeah,
art radiance. And I think there you go. There's a whole living quality. Whereas
exactly.
craft has presence, but art has radiance.
Right. And uh, I at one point I thought about being a portrait artist, and I joined the portrait co-op here in Annapolis and started to do some portraits. And what happened was I found that I was always painting the dark side. And it was just coming out. I didn't know what it was at that time, back in the mid 90s when I was doing that. But I kept painting these garish pictures of people. And of course, they don't want them because I'm expressing their dark side. And I had luck with one piece, which was when we painted the executive director of Maryland Hall, which is our arts center. It used to be the White High School in Annapolis, and it got turned over to the arts. Um, the executive director, they had to come 5 times, 3 hours each time, and it so happened that I started in that art co-op on her 5th time, so she had already sat 12 hours for everybody else in the class, and I had 1 3-hour period. And so I said, okay, and I just started to whip color onto the page as quick as I could. And in the end, I made her look like the Grinch in color and so on. And at the end, she said she wanted to buy all the portraits, and she did buy them all. And asked each one of us what we wanted to be paid for it. And I said, well, how about $100? And so she gave me a check for $100 for that painting. And, I figured it meant that she was going to burn it or throw it in the dumpster, right? But about a year later, I discovered that she'd put them all on her wall in her office at Maryland Hall, and mine was right in the smack in the center. And I said, Linnell, how can you like that? I mean, it's just awful. And she said, well, That's exactly how I was feeling that day. And I like yours the best of all of them.
Nice.
So,
French.
you
Yeah,
know,
heart got shrank by all
so
sitting there. So
so I recognized that I had no future as a portrait artist because people want to be painted in a lovely way, um, but it taught me a lot of things about the unconscious and so on. Let me go back to some of these others. Roberta Harvey says, "Good day. Um, to all, and this video about the Red Book, which I have found to download before. However, it's all in German, so I can't read it. Glad to be here for this. Great." Cherie says, "I had a serendipitous moment at the hospital the other day, meeting an Air Force pilot in the Vietnam War and historian. I was left breathless. He also knew of James Bamford, a naval reservist for 20 years, and his books on the NSA. Harvey, Roberta says, okay, yet evil is live backwoods. I am into looking at words backwards. Yeah, that will do it. Richard says, Satan has no allegiance to anyone but his primordial self. Your dragons can make you a comfortable living, but the price is your soul. Roberta, Shri, I hear you, and what does his book say about NSA? Okay, I'm going to leave that. Richard, no strings attached except your soul. And Shri, okay, they're talking about the NSA, so I'm going to leave that. And
well, also too, I think what's interesting about the no strings attached except your soul, I think people need to be careful, one, about external divinity and understanding you are divine. Look inside.
yeah,
And if someone, there's no contract that, you can take my soul. I'm alive. God is the universe. Evil can be the same. But the thing is, you look within and have sovereign adult boundaries, not the childish petition. You're not
yeah,
asking for permission. And I laugh. It's like a little girl has 5 German Shepherds, right?
yeah,
And someone says, so you have 5 German Shepherds. When someone takes two, how many do you have? And she says, 5. And they said, no, no, no. Someone really takes two. What do you have? She said, 5 and a dead body. So, it's like, so there's, and so that little girl is sovereign, and it's not okay, you can take this away from me. No, you can't. And so I think it's like Jung said, never accept the diagnosis unless you first have given it to yourself.
right.
There's a whole quality of, even Dr. Larry Dossey, in his book about the power of prayer, there was a chapter on medical hexing, and that people were given, say, 6 months to live. And at the first day of the 6 months, or end of the 6th month, they died. And his statement was, because they were told to. Instead of the happy bouncer of the higher self, nope, not on the list, next.
Yeah.
So I think there's a power of suggestion magic that I think even in my work, I need to be careful of. So it's not my stuff going to someone else. It's allowing them to unfold their inner nature their way instead of my way. And I think there's an evil there when people don't have diet evil. When people don't understand, they're just speaking what they've been told. It's kind of like grandma's roast. You don't cut the ends off because she just had a small oven.
Yeah. So Anthony says, is automatic writing similar to Rocky painting? And if different, can you share how? I would say that it's similar, and it's just a different way of taking dictation from the unconscious. And so it's a perfectly valid art form. I have a lot of stories about that, but I'm not going to tell them now. Richard, you see how art is vanity. It's all about the self Nothing personal, Skip. I'm just expressing my thoughts. Yep, nothing personal taken. Cherie, what is the greatest gift one can give a person? Life is a sacred journey. Um, well, understanding that life is a sacred journey is a good start, I would say.
I don't know if it's the only, but one of my primary gifts is, can I protect someone else's solitude? And I think that's important because then they're able to open up their way. And the
Yeah,
only way I can do that is the self-care of, I have my own back, so I'm safe.
right.
And I can give my heart more breathing room, give them a space. And
Yeah,
it's not holding space, but just then they can relax into their own natural nature more, their way. And in a sense, I've removed myself from the picture, but I've given them a birth, so to speak, BERTH.
so Cherie says life is a pilgrimage. One participates. As a tourist, one demands and expects, right? So being a tourist is not the same as participating. And that's why I normally don't take tours unless I want a quick and dirty experience of a famous site. I do my own exploration, but I have taken tours too, and both have their uses. Um, Roberta says, I didn't know that about the word tourist, and yet I don't like that word, and now I know why. Yep, tourism is all about the rational, and these are the things you have to see, and this is what you have to take out of it, and this is what everybody thinks about it. Well, if you're doing that, you're living somebody else's life, right?
And think about the word tour as the base of tourism versus journey. Tourism is you're being led by the nose by someone else. Journey, you're leading yourself by your own nose.
Right. So Cherie says, as a pilgrim, you love and transform one another, as C.G. Jung did. Absolutely. Richard, art is acceptable to God if you use it to his glory. Absolutely. Yeezy says, what do you all think about the Old Testament God? Well, he's evolved. The God image has evolved dramatically since the time of the ancients. Roberta, thank you, gentlemen. And hearing my name said was lovely, yes, but look within. I wholeheartedly agree. Cherie, I found out I had breast cancer that day at the hospital, and I had everyone laughing. Roberta, yes, my father passed after he was told this, given 6 months. We are in a vulnerable state when we go to a doctor. Cherie, the doctor and his wife were not voting for Biden or Trump. All I meant were not either. Uh, okay, right. Susan, gotcha. Thank you both. And I began to see the control inherent in my question as you both answering, and that's what you finished with. Perfect. The path is to follow you, right?
I
And
think to add to that comment, she saw the verb control that she was using, and I think that I try to make the word control and the verb control and to shame, walk the plank,
yeah,
be a pirate, walk the
yeah.
plank, and instead use the word navigate.
Just think if there are railroad tracks laid down, and if there are, don't follow them, right? The traditional way is don't follow someone else's path, seek what they sought, make your own path and let others follow you. And
And the
so
whole, I took the road less traveled.
right. And so I'm actually starting to like my own art because I've been doing this abstract work, and I know what it means, and it has power for me. And um, the crazy thing is everybody I show it to seems to like it at some level. And I the reason they like it is because it's actually a mirror. So they're seeing themselves in that mirror. And the reason people didn't like my portraits is because that's also a mirror, and they're seeing their dark side in that mirror. And so I don't paint portraits of friends anymore. No way.
Well, on this too, I mean, elephant in the room, Brian's a doctor, medical professional. And I mean, do you have a perspective here on this from that kind of, with that kind of concept? I mean, that you're willing to share, and I understand. I mean,
Yeah, I'll just tell you, there's a lot of mystery. There's things that I can't explain that I've participated in and witnessed. And I mean, there is such a thing as people giving up,
Yeah.
and their pathology is not quite sufficient to explain, they're dying.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
so don't take advice. I mean, so it's like, don't allow the pathology to be, you're the one who brought yourself down. I mean, that rather than what the pathology was medically.
Yeah.
That's
And
a really good.
yeah. And I went through a 10-year period of painting portraits and painting lots of other things. And I really didn't like my work very much. I mean, some of it was compelling, but I didn't like the style that I had developed and so on. So I put it aside for like 20 years. And it's only now that I'm coming back to it when I can come with a fresh start with an entirely different style. And now it's meaningful to me. Okay, let's go on. Examining the examining the numerous prophetic passages in Liber Novus, it becomes clear that at the heart of Jung's experience there abides a vision of the formation of a new God image. But what indications did Jung give regarding the nature of this new God image? And moreover, how may contemporary persons facilitate the arising of a new God image in their own natures and in the new religion that is to come? Liber Novus offers several statements that refer to the coming God image. The tone is set in the early part of Liber Primus. Jung there recounts several visions that he experienced, which foretold of the time when, quote, the Great War broke out between the peoples of Europe, unquote. He then declares, quote, within us is the way, the truth, and the life. The signposts have fallen. Unblazed trails lie before us. Do not be greedy to gobble up the fruits of foreign fields. Do you not know that you yourselves are the fertile acre, which bears everything that avails you? Comments?
I think that's, all the wisdom of the ages lives within. And he's talking about that rather than looking outward again. The thing about ecclesiastical structures and religion is it's all based on, I need something additional than me, which then implies that I'm not enough. And I think that then leads to the statements of superficial vanity and worries about that, instead of masking and muting your own power, where vanity is just a little speck of dust. Making beauty is relatively easy. Actually, making something that turns someone's stomach, that's more difficult. And maybe that has something to do with evil. I'm not sure. But I think this whole within us is the way, the truth, and the life. I don't, like prostrate to some higher being. I inhabit a universe that's larger than me. And I find that if there's any concept of the verb to worship, to me, it's breath is prayer. Live my life into being is the worship, rather than going, sitting, And I think the real point of church is to get people to sit still and understand that you can receive, and not that what they're telling me I have to do. If I look at what's hidden in a sanctuary, it's the ability for a community to sit quietly together
For an
and
hour,
not
yeah.
judge and have dignity and difference. And so really what happens to me, the true merit of a church is what is unseen, unheard, unexperienced verbally out here audibly, what is seen and heard and experienced in silence together.
Yeah. So here's a compliment to you, Jordan, from Diane Shamam, who has been at both of our confluences. Diane says, I love Jordan's comment about the conscious use of the unconscious being a meditative prayer. I'm in complete accord.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
Grace
Diane.
says that part, yes. And
actually,
Richard says,
thank you, Diane, because you just gave me the words. The memory wasn't coming back. I used to say, contemplate the meditation and meditate the contemplation. And thank you for bringing that up, because it brought back the conscious, unconscious, meditate, contemplate, meditate piece. Thank you.
yeah. And what I wanted to say about this last sentence, do you not know that you yourselves are the fertile acre which bears everything that avails you? The point about this is you can't be praying for God, please give me a tricycle. Okay.
Yeah. That's the adult version of God, is a child version of God as Santa Claus. You know?
Right. And so the point is, and I never understood this, but I used to do it in high school. And I still do it. And that is that every day that there was a test, I would say a little prayer to myself. Nobody else knew this, and I've only mentioned it a couple of times recently. And that is, my prayer was, Dear Heavenly Father, please give me the strength to do my best in this examination. That's it. Okay. Not give me an A, but please give me the strength to do my best. So there I'm calling upon the unconscious to come up and give me what's necessary so that I can pass. That's what I needed. And I did that spontaneously. It never occurred to me that it made a lot of sense until now, 60 years later, I look back on it and say, yeah, that's what I was doing. I was calling up my unconscious to help me in the test. And I wasn't calling on Santa Claus to give me an A, right?
Right.
And so I'm going to just mention there's Grace here is saying to breathe is to pray. And my wife has now an entire book by a very well-known Buddhist practitioner on breathing and how important breathing is and how you should breathe through your nose if possible. And, it's one of the issues that came up in the debate the other night where Mr. Biden was clearly mouth breathing throughout the entire debate. But, he was there, kind of like that. And it's through the nose that comes the relaxation you need to properly respond. And anyway,
yeah, that was painful.
yeah. All right. So let me read on. So the point is, you're the fertile acre. Everybody's a fertile acre, and everybody gets different opportunities at any given time. I've gotten lousy opportunities, and I've gotten great opportunities in my lifetime. And I actually developed a definition for luck. Luck is positive random accident positively exploited. So, in other words, random accidents occur to you all the time, good or bad. And you have to recognize the good ones and exploit those, do what you can with those. And the bad ones, just leave them in the dust and keep moving. Because
Well, Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, one or the other, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And what it is when that means you're focused. So you're aware, your radar's on. So you said, that random action. Oh, look what popped up on the radar. Well, what am I going to do with it? Or duck, but the thing is, you have that ability to capitalize on something that you didn't even intend. It just came up because you were there, aware for the opportunity.
Right. And, people that invest in the lottery, for example, buying 100 lottery tickets is not very different from buying one because it doesn't get you extra closer to the success. And you might as well just buy one ticket. If you're going to play the lottery, just buy one. Don't try to buy 1,000 of them or something on the thought that that's going to give you a better chance, because it won't. And
yeah, it's not like walking out on a golf course with a golf club and an umbrella and a lightning storm and holding them up. I mean, to increase your odds. It's
right. Exactly.
Oops.
And let's see. So I'm going to read on here. It is clear from the beginning of Jung's mysterious prophetic book that the future God image is none other than the divine essential, selfhood indwelling in the human soul. Here, again, we must turn to the expanded version of the sermons for a clarifying commentary. At the conclusion of the first sermon, he's talking about the 7 sermons to the dead, Philemon instructs his audience to strive for what he calls their essences. He continues, quote, "At bottom, therefore, there is only one striving, namely the striving for one's own essence. If you had this striving, you would not need to know anything about the pleroma and its qualities, and yet you would attain the right goal by virtue of your own essence. Since, however, thought alienates us from our essence, I must teach you that knowledge with which you can bridle your thoughts. Many Gnostic writings explicitly state that the essence of the human is the fragment of the ultimate reality residing at the center of the being. When it is possible for the human to gain access to this essence, all other religious and spiritual endeavors are redundant." Let's turn the page. Are redundant. It is largely the fault of the demiurge, or so Jung's old friends, the Gnostics, believed, that this access is so fraught with difficulty. In the sermons, Jung's spirit mentor, Philemon, offers advice regarding the judicious way in which humans may free themselves from the yoke of the demiurge. Unlike some of the more radical Gnostics of old, Philemon advises us to neither flee from the demiurge, Abraxas, nor to seek him. In one passage in the sermons, Philemon says about Abraxas, to resist him resist him not is liberation. The Gnostic demiurge, by whatever name he may be called, is omnipresent in the outer world. While humans are in terrestrial embodiment, they must both accept the demiurge's presence and equally endeavor to counterbalance his influence by contacting their own indwelling essence. This indwelling essence is described in the seventh sermon as the solitary star in the heavens. This statement is supplemented by the revelation Jung recorded in his Black Book journal on January 16th, 1916, wherein his soul admonished him, quote, "You have in you the one God, the wonderfully beautiful and kind, the solitary starlight unmoving, you who is older and wiser than the Father, he who has a safe hand, who leads you among all the darkness and death scares of dreadful Abraxas." Okay. He gives joy and peace, since he is beyond death and beyond what is subject to change. He is no servant and no friend of Abraxas. What then is the principal deficiency in the God of old? Ion. The God who is to be overcome, employing the nomenclature of the sermons and other statements by Jung, we might say that the God of the monotheistic religions is a compound in which the ultimate God, called the Pleroma in the Septem Sermones, the seven sermons, is unconsciously combined with the demiurge, named by Jung as Abraxas. Based on the numerous paradoxical and even downright evil deeds and utterances of the Old Testament deity, and the fact that this deity was carried forward into Orthodox Christianity, one is tempted to conclude, as Jung did in answer to Job, that the Judeo-Christian God is at least a being who embodies both arrogance and unconsciousness. It seems quite impossible to believe that this God is both almighty and good. For his goodness would thus have to be combined with impotence, or alternatively, his omnipotence would be joined to his absence of goodness. A considerable portion of humanity has thus reached the point where it can no longer endure the unconscious tension embodied by a blind belief in an utterly enigmatic and derisory God image. This circumstance is causing an unprecedented upsurge in atheism and secularism in Western culture. So I need to stop for a bio break. You can go ahead and continue.
I think that passage there speaks directly to the comment question before of what do we think about the Old Testament. I appreciate that this came in. That was a great question, but I think Jung, or I think Murray Stein really nailed it there, where there's this unconscious quality, the demiurge, the Abraxas, where that which is outside of us is not the way. So in that sense, there was Old Testament kind of a power of suggestion, being beaten down by this deity, being the fear of God instead of the divine life of moving and living forward. I mean, thoughts, Brian, on this passage?
Yeah, because it hits me that Abraxas as demiurge. He's basically basically a Bronze Age warrior king who's writ large, and kind of like in the answer to Job. There's I think people experience this, is they have inside themselves this notion that God is not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's, and that sort of without a new God image, I think the alternative is to not do it. to not do religion, to not do God image.
Yeah, and that speaks into the higher secularism and atheism, where people aren't going to look at the inner, I'm good enough, this God is not good enough. So they're going to continue to go, well, that one's mean, so I don't want it. But then they ignore themselves as the substitute or the replacement. So you're right. The new God image is, has self. And the thing is, it's not conceited, selfish, arrogant. It's self-centered in that you have center. You are center. Not everything revolves around me, center. Not orbital gravitational planetary movement, I'm the center. It's I'm my center. And then when I interact with someone else who has their center, there's a magic between us, that third person. What do we pour together on the table? And then there's Jung's, when two people interact, a reaction occurs, even if it's no reaction. But I think that's when communication becomes connection.
Right.
Self-connect.
And I think with this not having a God image that's sufficient to include the pleroma and our own divine spark, I think what's happened in the sort of secularism, atheism is basically putting in its place and the unrelativized ego. I think everybody's just sort of solipsistically doing whatever their ego feels is the thing to be doing right now.
I think that's a really good point, the solipsistic piece. And if anyone doesn't know what solipsism is only the self exists. So I call it pretty nihilism, and so it's the kind of thing where, and it's interesting. It's like solipsism is the adult version of the adolescent nihilism, and it does not any better. But with that ego piece there, that's where people start saying kill the ego. But the thing is, that's ego as a shell, ego as a fish scale, ego as surface. Whereas when you have that inner peace, you have chosen that you are enough, you have ego strength. And to me, ego strength is simply another way to say the shape of my identity. And that surface is generated by my substance. And then it's not egomaniacal, it's healthy and nourishing. And I then can live as myself instead of having these trappings of all these things that I should have molted long ago that hinder. But yeah, I'm glad you brought up solipsism, because that's one of my...
Right. I've frequently come in contact with 13-year-olds who are really feel their ego pushing them, and many of them say they're planning to be a NFL star or an NBA star, one of the two. That's their plan, and they know they can do it. And I think particularly of one student who insists that he can do that, even though he's one of the smallest children in the school physically. And the question is, once he realizes that he's not going to make it in the NFL or the NBA, can he recover enough ego to do the next thing, which is what he needs to do? But I have any number of them that swear that they're planning to be an NFL star or an NBA star, or maybe a baseball star.
That's a great example, because I think when people say, I'm going to be great, that's like confidence. It's the other side of shame. It's still a reaction to external forces. You're taking that my greatness is relative to my attention that I receive from other people, instead of the what am I in service to? And then you simply do your work your way. And if it's helping other people or it nourishes you either way or both, that's not ego, that's ego strength. Where, I mean, even this year, last week, someone asked me, what's your business plan? You used to have these 12-page, policies and implementation procedures. And I'm like, my only business plan now, go sit at my table, period. And then whoever shows up does, but I don't know. And so that accommodates the not knowing. And then I'm not trying to be great. That's what I'm in service to. Maybe I like sitting at a table too much. And so.
Yeah, I mean, I often think, what am I doing here, right? And then I say, well, this is, I'm called to this. And the two groups that I'm involved with regularly, this group and the Wednesday afternoon advanced reading group, both of those, I'm called to that work and I can't stop.
Right.
And I'm unconscious of why I'm called to it particularly. I know I've been called to Jung's work for now going on 40 years, approaching 40 years, over 35 years. And, I've just gotten deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And I can't go away from it.
And it's interesting you say that, because I think the more I keep Jung as an ally, the less I need him. And it's not that need anymore. It's an ally. Look at this. And more, I'm not adding more to me. The seed husks are pushing off, and it becomes more and more, oh, he's him, I'm me. And there's no relativization anymore, where now, as I'm listening to a historical friend, and sometimes I'm going, that's a little too arrogant. That's too ostentatious for me. Except the disagreement still is a connection. So I see, especially when I kind of start to disagree with something, there's a dignity in the difference where it's more rare, but I appreciate those points even more, because they stand out like gold. Because what happened is the disagreement gave me a greater sense of my own perspective.
Right. And you have to be willing to sort of laugh at yourself and acknowledge your mistakes. I mean, if what happened to Biden last week in the debate had happened to Trump, he would say it never happened. He would be lying and say, I was great, I was perfect in that debate. But Biden comes in and acknowledges that it was a poor performance. And, I've had good performances and bad performances, and I'll acknowledge that. I'm not convinced that Biden being on the ticket in November is the correct answer, but I think the different way the two men would handle the situation is dramatic and very telling. Okay, I want to go on now.
I want to agree there. And also, I find it's more important, there's the divisive piece, to not what if it didn't happen the other way. So we will never know. We can project based on the weather reporting from what we know 100% of the time. But I think it's presumptuous and actually a waste of energy to do that. Whereas instead of, oh, look at that, that's that, and it's always that, it's not relative to the other. So I think there's a point of perspective of, we can get out of the politics, get it out of the political piece to, hey, this happened this way, but not then turn around and blame storm someone else who it did not happen to. And though we could 100% probably go to Vegas on what would have happened, I find that's the slot machine.
Yeah. Okay, so there's only about a half a page left in this segment of this particular essay. I'm going to read through it so that we get to the end for today, and then we'll go on next week. But so throughout the 20th century, humanity experienced a multitude of terrible events. These undermined many people's ability to have faith in a benevolent God. The medieval brutality of modern-day terrorists, motivated by commitment to a monotheistic God, has only reinforced the rejection of such traditional God images in secular society. Our age cries out for a new understanding of divinity and a new God image. This was Jung's prophecy in Liber Novus. As he also noted, this development may take centuries until a new God image constellates. We will pass through an epoch of chaos and violence. When Christendom cast out the salvific myth of gnosis in favor of an unimaginative literalism, it became spiritually impoverished. Our impoverishment has now reached its terminus. We await the formation of our new myth, a myth that rediscovers the primordial images and myth of gnosis. As Jung declared, I hope the reader will not be offended if my exposition sounds like a Gnostic myth. We are moving in those psychological regions where, as a matter of fact, gnosis is rooted. The message of the Christian symbol is gnosis, and the response of it by the unconscious is gnosis in an even higher degree. Myth is the primordial language natural to these psychic processes, and no intellectual formulation comes anywhere near the richness and expressiveness of mythical imagery. Such processes are concerned with the primordial images, and these are best and most succinctly reproduced by figurative language. That was it.
I think that's important. Myth is the primordial language natural to these psychic processes. And again, instead of looking for divinity outside, don't look up to Jupiter or Pallas Athena Minerva.
Yeah.
Ask, what would Pallas Athena Minerva do? Do that. I mean, so it's like that. You become it rather than looking up or outward to it. And I think then the myth language aligns with our own internal dream language and those psychic processes. And then you can get some feelings in your gut where there's currency of value. Do that.
Right. Okay. And last weekend, sitting with Colleen and Tim and some others, one of the issues was, what is the myth that we're living? And the myth that we're living is that we are showing a way to access the unconscious. And I want to re-emphasize Lawrence Jaffe's one-sentence quote that sums it all up. The purpose of Jung's whole psychology is to make accessible to us that healing power which resides in our unconscious. Mm-hmm. So we have to think of ourselves as healers. And for whatever reason, we do have a good number of people that join us every week. And what is it that we're doing? We're making accessible to those people and to ourselves the healing power of their unconscious, not ours. I don't have an answer for anybody but myself. And my answer for myself is only provisional. Okay, my provisional answer is that I'm getting a lot out of my painting right now, my abstract painting. And it isn't, and that is not the images that come out of my paintings, that come out from the unconscious. It's not that. What I'm getting is I'm feeling my own unconscious heal me as I work. Okay, it's my form of meditation, and there's any number of ways that you can get to that um, healing power of the unconscious. And so, I was talking the other day about, what happens when you go to a funeral. Well, you're not going to bring that person back, that physical person, but chances are their spirit is going to live on with you no matter what. But the purpose of a funeral as a service that the church provides is to open the unconscious. Okay, it opens the unconscious to allow you to heal from the loss. Okay, from the loss of that person in your life. And that's exactly what a funeral service is doing. It's what we are doing here. I don't remember anything that we've talked about the last 2 hours. I couldn't repeat what I said 5 minutes ago because it all comes from my unconscious. And hopefully we say a sentence or two that opens your unconscious in the video, to think about things in your lives in a different way. I think that's the brilliance of it. We don't have any final answers. There's no final answer, and moreover, there never will be.
I'm glad you brought up the don't remember anything from the last 2 hours, because there's kind of I could probably go back and rewind and pick and choose, but at the same time, that's hard because it's just not there, because it's not necessary. And I think a lot of people take a lot of notes instead of living a lot of life. And so my concept here is forgetting is for getting. It opens up more room for the next good stuff. And in that sense, like roses that are established, their roots keep out the weeds. So there always is breathing room around an established rose. And I think that's a great metaphor for life of, don't take so many notes. Life is what passes you by when you're too busy making plans. I mean, have some ideas, take some notes, go to the grocery store, or, go take a walk. Because I think when you feel one way or another and down, exercise, it actually opens up the receptors. So if you go into the think your way out of the bad mood, well, you're just ruminating on the bad mood, giving it power. You're nourishing the bad mood. So just go change it, like go take a walk. So I think the whole don't remember the last 2 hours, I always love it and resonate when I don't. When I leave and I'm going, wonder what we're going to do next week. Because, I just got some tingles thinking about today, but not specifically why. And that's perfect, because that means I feel like I had an experience and was able to share and receive. And that's important, instead of look at what my takeaway was. It's not agreed. It's a connection, I think. So we, in a sense, share back and forth and, make deposits in each other's accounts, so to speak. And then we each have something different to take away and utilize, but we can forget where it came from.
Yeah. Gertrude Stein had a brilliant quote, which I have turned to so many times in the last 30 years, and it is, there ain't no answer. There never has been any answer. There ain't going to be no answer. That's the answer.
Yeah. That's there you go. Well said. I'll just pause right there.
Yeah. So
thanks, Gertrude.
Yeah, Gertrude. She lives on with us. She and Alice B. Toklas. And anyway, so with that thought, let us conclude for today. And I'm sorry for the late beginning. I'll try to get my computer ginned up a little earlier next time, because
well, if you do, then it's going to have a spontaneous, oh, but wait, we need to do it again. So
yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So, okay. Peace, everyone. Have a good week.
Peace.
Peace.
And we will see you next week.
Sounds good.
All right.
And I'll
Thanks,
be
Scott.
doing more about our confluence redux and our confluence ideas in the coming week. But I'm just back from California, and I got to get my ideas together. So
Will we get
Nice.
will we get an email for registration?
yeah, certainly you will get an email. Let me do one thing, and that's find the link for signing up for stuff, so that you can.
Oh, cool.
Everybody should sign up for that should be signed up who is listening to this broadcast right now, but I keep putting this up and forgetting to do it earlier in the session, but all right. Yeah, new registration for future events. So please, register for our Sunday sessions, and you will get notices about what we're doing in the Zoom meetings that we're going to be doing with Colleen and Tim. And obviously I'm going to use my entire mailing list for that, and it's just 2 weeks away, so it's quite soon, the next one that we're going to do, the first one that we're going to do. And it will be, the time of it is 10 a.m. Pacific time, 1 p.m. Eastern time, and about 7 p.m. European time, 6 p.m. London time, I believe. And you know your world clock, so everybody get the world clock function going on your smartphone, and you can figure out the time. And so it will be July 13th and 14th. There will be 2 sessions, each one of them 2 hours. And it's going to be a continuing exercise. We're going to ask you, as artists who are in some way expressing your unconscious, to bring that forward. And we'll give you time on these sessions, and our organizers will provide commentary also on whatever you do. So it can be any kind of art form. It can be poetry. It can be dance if you want to do a video of yourself dancing or what have you. All those things are possible, and so you don't have to be a painter. You don't have to be an abstract painter. Obviously, Vincent van Gogh and many famous painters, including Tim and Colleen, have painted objects, but painted them in a different way, and which demonstrates that they're calling it from the unconscious. So I'll be better prepared next week and in future events to talk to you about what we're looking for. But we were asking ourselves, what is our myth? And our myth is that we have a path that you can follow or not, but a path which is a showing of the process, focusing on the process, not a specific method of creating art or religion. So anyway, that's the general idea. Peace, everybody.
Okay, peace.
See you next week.